loving kindness quilt from our stained glass block collection. Let me show you what we need in order to make it. The supplies that you'll need to do your loving kindness block in our stained glass block collection are your Mary Ellen's Best Press, so you can press your fabric, temporary spray adhesive so you can attach your backing fabric to the back of your hoop. You're also going to need a jump drive or some type of device, whatever you use on your machine to transfer the design to the machine. You're going to need your hoop scissors so you can cut your fabric while it's in the hoop. And of course you're also going to need your trimmer by George or your trimmer 2.0 in order to trim your completed block. The fabric and thread that you're going to need is you're going to need a scrap of your fabric 1. I have a larger piece here, but you will just need a small scrap. You're going to need fabric 3. You're going to need fabric 4, fabric 5. You're going to need your lead fabric and also a piece for your backing fabric. On your thread, you're going to need thread B, thread C, thread D. You're going to need embroidery bobbin thread and also water soluble thread. And you're going to start out by hooping your battleizer in your hoop, and we'll show you how to do the rest. The first step for loving kindness is you're going to hoop your battleizer and place neutral thread in your needle only and embroidery bobbin thread in your bobbin, and then the machine will stitch the design outline. For step 2, you're going to put water-soluble thread in your needle only, and you're going to place fabric 1 right side up, and the machine will sew the tack down stitches. And now you can trim anything on the inside of the block to a scant 1/4 inch, and anything on the outside edge of the block you can leave about a 1/2 inch. For step 3, you're going to put your neutral thread back in your needle only, and you're going to lay your black lead fabric right side down, raw edges even, and the machine will stitch a seam. For step 4, you're going to flip your lead fabric right side up and finger press, and the machine will sew the tack down stitches. And now you can trim anything on the inside of the block a scant 1/4 inch. For step 5, you're going to place your fabric 3 scrap right side down, raw edges even over the lead fabric, and the machine will stitch the seam. And for step 6, you can flip fabric 3 right side up and finger press, and the machine will sew a tack down stitch. And you can trim a scant 1/4 inch on the inside of the block. For step 7, you're going to place your lead fabric right side down, raw edges even, and the machine will stitch a seam. For step 8, you can flip your lead fabric right side up, finger press, and sew the tack down stitches. And then anything on the inside of the block you can trim to a scant 1/4 inch. And then for step 9, you're going to place your fabric 5 right side down, raw edges even over the lead fabric, and the machine will stitch a seam. For step 10, you're going to place water soluble thread in the needle only, flip your fabric 5 right side up, and sew the tack down stitches. And now you can trim to a scant 1/4 inch anything on the inside of the block. For step 11, you're going to place your neutral thread back in the needle only, and you're going to place your lead fabric right side down, raw edges even, and the machine will stitch a seam. For step 12, you can flip the lead fabric right side up, finger press, and the machine will stitch the tack down stitch. And if you need to trim anything to a scant 1/4 inch inside the block, you can do that now. For step 13, you're going to place your fabric 4 right side down over the lead fabric with the raw edges even and sew the seam. On step 14, you're going to place water-soluble thread in the needle only, flip your fabric 4 right side up, finger press, and sew the tack down. If you need to do any trimming on that piece, you can do that now. For step 15, you're still going to have water-soluble thread in the needle, and you're going to lay fabric 1 over this section, and it's going to stitch a tack down stitch. And then if you need to trim anything, you're going to trim 1/4 inch inside the block and leave approximately 1/2 inch on the outside of the block. For step 16, you're going to place your neutral thread in the needle only and lay your lead fabric right side down over fabric 1 and stitch the seam. For step 17, you're going to flip your lead fabric right side up, finger press, and the machine will stitch the tack down stitches. And if necessary, you can trim a scant 1/4 inch any area inside the block. For step 18, you're going to place your fabric 3 scrap right side down, raw edges even, and stitch the seam. For step 19, you're going to flip fabric 3 right side up and finger press and sew the tack down stitches. Now you can trim a scant 1/4 inch any area inside the block. For step 20, you're going to place your lead fabric right side down, raw edges even, and sew the seam. For step 21, you're going to flip your lead fabric right side up, finger press, and sew the tack down stitches. And if necessary, you can trim a scant 1/4 inch any area inside the block that might need it. For step 22, you're going to place your fabric 5 right side down, raw edges even, over the lead fabric and sew the seam. For step 23, you're going to put water-soluble thread in the needle only, and you're going to flip fabric 5 right side up, and you're going to sew the tack down stitches. And now you're going to trim a scant 1/4 inch inside the block and leave about 1/2 inch on the outside of the block. For step 24, you're going to place your neutral thread back in the needle only and place your lead fabric right side down, raw edges even, and stitch the seam. For step 25, you're going to flip the lead fabric right side up, finger press, and sew the tack down stitch. And now you can trim to a scant 1/4 inch any area inside the block that may need it. For step 26, you're going to place your fabric 4 right side down, raw edges even, over the lead fabric and sew the seam. For step 27, you're going to place water-soluble thread in the needle only. You're going to flip your fabric 4 right side up and finger press and sew the tack down stitches. And if necessary, you can trim, but you may not need to. For step 28, you're going to place your fabric 3 right side up over that center area. And with water-soluble thread still in the needle, you're going to sew the tack down stitches. And now you're going to trim fabric 3 right up close to the stitching, just as you would for machine applique. For step 29, you're going to place your backing fabric right over the outline of the block. You can spray it with temporary spray adhesive to hold it in place. And with water-soluble thread still in the needle, you're going to take it to the machine and sew the basting stitch. For step 30, you're going to place thread D in the needle and the bobbin. You're going to turn your automatic thread cutter off if your machine has that feature, and you're going to bring your bobbin thread to the top before you begin sewing the quilting. By doing those two simple quick steps, it will make for a much nicer, prettier looking back. For step 31, you're going to place thread B in the needle and the bobbin. And again, make sure your thread cutter is off and bring your bobbin thread to the top, and you can sew some more quilting. For step 32, you can place thread F in the needle and the bobbin and sew the satin cover stitch. For the final step, which is step 33, you're going to place thread C in the needle and the bobbin, and again with the thread cutter turned off, bring your bobbin thread to the top and you can sew the motifs. Now we'd like to show you what is involved and what you need in order to do a faux whole cloth version of Loving Kindness. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to hoop your battleizer, and you're going to put neutral thread in the needle and the bobbin, and you're going to sew a placement outline. For step 2, you're going to spray the wrong side of your backing fabric with temporary spray adhesive, and then center that over the placement stitch. And then you're going to place fabric 1 over the placement stitch on the front, and you're going to take it to the machine and sew the basting stitch. For step 3, you're going to take the quilting thread that you've chosen, and we suggest a polyester embroidery thread, and you're going to match it in the needle and in the bobbin, making sure your automatic thread cutter is turned off and that you bring the quilting thread to the top before you begin, and then you can sew the beautiful stitches.
Here's our loving kindness block all ready to go, and we're going to trim it with our trimmer by George so we can get it into the rest of the quilt. We're going to assume that this particular block is a corner block, so we're going to trim 1/4 inch past the basting line on one corner. The basting line's here. We'll use the 1/4 inch on the back side of the trimmer by George. Line up your 1/4 inch. Trim through all layers. So this corner will get binding. These two corners will be joined to the rest of the quilt. So what you'll do here is turn back the top layer. Take the metal crimped edge of the trimmer, put it up against the fabric, and then you're trimming off just your batting and your backing. So there's the back with all this hanging out, so we need to trim that part. So we turn the trimmer over again and use your 1/4 inch line on your trimmer ruler and clean up that edge. So there's loving kindness ready to be put into the quilt. Here's loving kindness, the whole cloth version, and we're going to trim it to put it into our quilt. We're going to use these two edges for the binding. So we'll take our trimmer by George 2.0, turn it over, place the 1/4 inch line on the basting line, trim through all layers, the top layer, the batting, and the backing. So these two edges are ready for binding. These two edges will be joined to the rest of the quilt. So what we'll do is we'll turn back the top layer, put the trimmer up to it, trim off the batting and the backing. Metal edge of the trimmer goes right up to the basting line. So that's all trimmed and ready to go. Now we need to trim off the top layer. That's going to get a 3/4 inch seam for a different joining method we're going to show you. So I've taken my highlighter tape and I've placed it along the 3/4 inch line on the trimmer ruler, and I'll use that line to line up with the basting line on the block. So here's loving kindness ready to be put into the quilt. These two edges will get binding, these two edges will get stitched to the quilt.